Here we go with your Phil Steele Plus tour with selections. 2-0 again last week, so a nice run right now for the Phil Steele Plus tour, finishing off the season with a bang. Last week we gave you the under in Seattle, Philly, and gave you Houston minus 2.5 over Buffalo. Both came home winners. A couple notes for you. Please make sure you subscribe to this YouTube thing here. When you subscribe, you will be notified of the upcoming videos. Now, all season long, I've been doing them every Friday. I can't guarantee I'm going to do them every Friday. I might put one out on a Wednesday, might put one out on a Friday during the year. But if you subscribe, you'll be notified whenever the videos are coming up. And I'm going to we're already hard at work at the magazine. We've only got about 5 months left till the magazine goes to press. Actually, less than 5 months. Already under a big-time deadline trying to get this thing out for the year. But as I come up with stuff, I'll jot them down and get you some interesting things on the Phil Steele Plus tour and how to use Phil Steele Plus. Got the big championship game this weekend. Not going to give you a pick on it. If you take a look at this matchup, LSU has definitely played the tougher schedule. They played Texas when Texas was in the top 10. Florida was in the top 10. Auburn in the top 10. Alabama, top 10. Georgia, top 10. Oklahoma, top 10. That's 6 teams they played this year that were in the top 10 at the time. Clemson's faced one, Ohio State, and they needed to come back to win it. That's on LSU's favor. I think when you look at the skill position players, the Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence is a wash. Etienne, Edwards-Helaire, wash. Receiving corps, a wash. The offensive line does go to LSU. They've got the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line. I think they rate the edge there. But the defensive edge goes to Clemson. They have the number one defense in college football, holding opponents to 152 yards per game below their season average. Meanwhile, LSU is number 20, holding opponents to 78 yards below their season average, so a definite edge there. LSU has a special teams edge, has played the tougher schedule, the games in New Orleans. How about Dabo Swinney? 8-1 against the spread as a dog in the postseason. 6 of them he's won outright. So, there's just so much good on both sides. I think we're going to have a great national title game. Sit back and enjoy it. Now, I will have a couple picks for you. I have watched every single play of every single bowl game. And if you haven't, I'll get you up to date on some of the games that we had some misleading finals this bowl season. And let's start off with, we're going to take a look at USC against Iowa. Now, when I say misleading finals, I'm going to say this. If you look at the final score, 49-24, you're saying, wow, USC's defense is bad. They just gave up 49 points, a season high, to Iowa this year. But let's take a look at a couple of facts. Iowa only had 328 yards in the game, and the game was tied 14-14 in the second quarter. Now, for USC, their quarterback, and when you use Phil Steele Plus, if you go here, the start chart, you can see is all filled in. You can see that Daniels was a starting quarterback at the beginning of the year. We've got the red is for starts lost. So far this year in our tabulations, we've got USC with a total of 38 starts lost. This is all updated on Phil Steele Plus. But if you take a look at the individual player stats, you'll see Keaton Slovis was on a roll. Now, we don't have the USC or the bowl game update for USC in this one. So we're going to click down here and click on the box score. And we'll see that Slovis in the game was 22-30 for 260 yards. Now, he got injured in the second quarter. As I mentioned, it was a ball game in the second quarter. When Slovis got injured, Matt Fink came in 12 of 18 for 74 yards. A different game. Iowa pulled away. And look at a couple of things from this game. A 98-yard kick return for a touchdown. 25-yard interception return for a touchdown. They also had a 6-yard TD drive for Iowa in this game. It's right here, 6-yard TD drive, which came after Fink fumbled the football on a sack. So that's 3 gift touchdowns. The defense didn't play bad. Only gave up 328 yards for the game, but Iowa did put up 49 points in the big win. So I thought I'd point that one out. How about the Southern Miss Tulane matchup? If we take a look at that one, I don't know if you watched it or not. It was just one of those early games that was on in the bowl season. But if you look at the final score, let's go take a look at Tulane here. Tulane over here, and we're going to put Southern Miss over here. Tulane won the game 30-13, dominating win, right? Well, let's take a little closer look. Look here. We've listed halftimes for every game. At the half, Southern Miss had a 199. We'll go to Southern Miss. Look at 199 to 74-yard edge. Led the game 13-6. If you're watching the game, on Southern Miss's last offensive play of the half, Abraham drops back to pass, throws to the right sideline. He's hit as he throws. Guess what? He injures his shoulder. He's out for the game. So for Southern Miss, and we'll see if we got the individual player stats. Nope, they're not updated there either. But they'll be updated a little later on. For Southern Miss, their backup quarterback, let's take a look at Watley's numbers for the game. 9 of 22 for 134 yards with 2 interceptions. It was the change, the key of the game. I mean, at the half, it's all Southern Miss, 199-74, 13-6. Abraham goes out, and Tulane dominates the second half. A key play to the game. So far, we've talked about 2 quarterback injuries. A note for you on this UAB App State game. App State won the game by 14, but tough loss for UAB straight up. I mean, they really were playing well. There was a situation here, and Phil Steele Plus doesn't quite capture it in here. We can look at the drive for the game. The score is 14-3, UAB, right here. And then Southern Miss, this says, goes 81 yards for 7 plays, gets a 17-yard touchdown pass. The key here was Southern Miss missed a field goal, so it's going to be 14-3, probably at the half. Not Southern Miss, excuse me. App State missed a field goal. So then UAB was called for leaping. And their defensive player got about a yard within the line of scrimmage, leaped straight up in the air, and they called him for leaping. It really, in my mind, watching it, I didn't see a leaping call whatsoever. He jumped straight up, and he was within the yards to do it. But the leaping call happened. They gave App State a first down. App State scored a touchdown, pulled to 14-10 at the half. That was a big play. Later, this one here, this Darrington Evans 31-yard TD run, a little bit on the fluky side. App State, 4th and 1, they're going for it. UAB blows it up and stuffs the play. But there's a fumble. The ball rolls backwards. Evans picks it up and runs 31 yards for a touchdown. So instead of a stop on downs, it turns into an App State touchdown. And later, there was a 31-yard fumble or 24-yard fumble return for a touchdown here. So all those things happened to get App State the 31-17 win. UAB could easily have won that game outright. Take a look at a couple other interesting things. How about Florida State against Arizona State? All right, we're going to take a look at that one. I want to show you a couple things about this. Now, Arizona State did come out with the win, but Florida State suffered 6 turnovers and a missed field goal, and they got stopped on downs. So that's basically like 8 turnovers for the game. Look at the yardage. Florida State had a 470 to 282 yard edge, 21-13 first down edge. And how did Arizona State score their final touchdown? You got it. They scored it on a 25-yard interception return for a touchdown. Part of 6 big turnovers for Arizona State in this game. As mentioned, also stopped on downs, missed a field goal. And here, Arizona State, the line was about 5.5 on this thing. Big play right here. Arizona State gets stopped on the 2-point conversion, so they only win by 4. Nope, pass interference in the end zone gives them another crack at it. Jaden Daniels runs it in for the 2 and has them win the game by 6. So a couple of key plays had to happen there. And as mentioned, Florida State, 470 to 282 yard edge. Rarely do you lose a game, but if you have 6 turnovers, odds are something like that's going to happen. Speaking of misleading final scores, let's go to Virginia Tech against Kentucky. And when we take a look at this one, here's Virginia Tech. Let's go take a look at Kentucky over here in the SEC. And at this game, at the end of the game, look at the box score. The final score is Kentucky 37-30, so they won the game by a touchdown. Right here, there is about 22 seconds ago in the game, Kentucky trails 30-24. Well, how they win the game by 7? Well, they scored a touchdown here on a 13-yard TD pass, Bowden Ali, and that happened with just 15 seconds left in the game. Then you guessed it, The lateral play, the fumble, the 28-yard return by Jordan Wright, and what was a barely escaping with a 1-point win for Kentucky. It looks like a comfortable 37-30 win because they scored with no time left. And since they scored with no time left, they did not attempt the extra point. That's why it's a 7-point margin as opposed to a 6-point margin. So tough loss for Virginia Tech. Kentucky gets a touchdown with 15 seconds left, and then the misleading final happens on a 28-yard fumble return for a touchdown on the lateral play with no time left in the game. And finally, Virginia against Florida. Now, Virginia played a pretty good game, but still, Florida has got a 15-point lead, a 549 to 300-yard edge, and the game is basically over. But Virginia manages to drive down the field. Once again, if we take a look at our box score here, Virginia drives down the field. They go 75 yards in 8 plays. They get a 2-yard TD pass with 38 seconds left in the game. And as opposed to Florida winning the game against the spread, Virginia gets the backdoor cover with 38 seconds left in the game. Now, I will say this. Florida's field goal here put them ahead of the spread with 2:32 left. So it would have been somewhat of a fortunate cover for Florida, but in the long run, it was a backdoor cover for Virginia as they drove down the field, got the big touchdown. They had one big pass downfield, which got it rolling. Now, 2 games which are not misleading, but came very surprising to me. If you look at the Minnesota against Auburn game, I really felt Auburn was a stronger team coming in, and this shows you how bowl season goes sometimes. Look at this. Minnesota had a 494 to 232-yard edge, 23 to 13 first down edge. Coming in, I think there's no doubt Auburn had the edge on the offensive and defensive lines. Not in this game. No siree. Minnesota rushed for 215. Auburn rushed for 56. Minnesota did not allow a sack. Auburn allowed 2. Minnesota controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Hats off to the Gophers. They played much, much better than I had expected, and probably their best game of the season. And the same thing with Texas against Utah. You always wonder how teams are going to be heading in. Texas had a mediocre year, 5 losses. Utah was dominant all season with the exception of this Oregon game right here. And Texas dominated the game, 438 to 254, an even bigger yardage edge than Oregon put on Utah. They ran the ball for 231 yards against the number 1 rush defense in college football. And that 231 was their second-best performance of the year, third-best performance of the year for Texas. Once again, very surprising. All right, let's get to the 2 selections for this week, and we're going to take a look. Let's start with the FCS. As you know, we don't put out an FCS magazine. Too costly, too expensive. And plus, there was never enough feedback and never enough people buying the magazine. But we do have the FCS completely covered here on Phil Steele Plus. So if you're looking for a magazine, this is even better than the magazine because we update things on a weekly basis. Now, on the right, I'm going to put North Dakota State because their fans buy tickets to Frisco, Texas every year knowing they're going to be in this game. And they've been in the game 7 of the last 8 years, and they've won the game 7 of the last 8 years. So I've given them a slight home field edge in this one for North Dakota State. Now, as you could tell by the power ratings, James Madison, 88.3. North Dakota State, 87.3. That says James Madison should be favored by a point. And they've been playing better in the playoffs. Look at this, 94.1 to 89.7. When I talked to East Carolina's coach Houston this year, he told me James Madison was going to have the best defense in FCS. Guess what? They hold opponents to 113 yards per game below their season average. North Dakota State 101 below their season average. So you've got the best 2 defenses, but James Madison does have the best. Offensively, I look at Ben DiNucci. He's having a heck of a year. 25-5 ratio, 71%. He's a Pitt transfer. We can go back and look at all his games. They're all updated right up top here. You can see he's had a very good season. Was there any bad games? I don't even see a bad game here. Maybe Towson, 14 to 25, was his weakest game of the year. That's still one. They won 27 to 10. They've been pretty much dominant all year and blowing teams away. North Dakota State's Trey Lance, this one really stood out to me. 25 touchdown passes, but look at this. 0 interceptions, and Lance has run for 870 yards. 6.7 yards per carry, an additional 10 rushing touchdowns. So he's accounted for 35 touchdowns. He's got 0 interceptions on the year. I'm very impressed with that. I think when you look at these 2 teams, they're clearly the best. But And by the way, James Madison, if we go back here, you can follow along. I've got FCS all the way back to 2011, color-coded in green and red. We can go back and see the last time North Dakota State did not win the championship. It was right here, 2016. This wasn't even a national championship game. James Madison went into North Dakota State and came out of there with a 27-17 win over the Bison. They had a 443, 348-yard edge. James Madison's actually in the national championship game. This is their third in the last 4 years. They didn't get there last year. They lost to North Dakota State by 4, and they beat Youngstown State 28-14. So 3 trips in the last 4 years. But James Madison's a favorite by a point in this game. I rate the two teams almost identical, very close. North Dakota State's been here, done that. It's their 7th appearance in the last 8 years. They've won 7 in the last 8. And I love it when a team's an underdog in that situation. They've won 7 in the last 8, yet they're the underdog. They're about a 1-point dog in this game. I'm going to go with North Dakota State +1 over James Madison. Should be a great game. I'm going to be riveted to it. It is, I believe it's on ABC at 12 o'clock noon on Saturday, so make sure you check it out. It's going to be a fun game to watch. We got 2 great defenses. If you asked me to pick the under was about 51 earlier in the week. It's sort of dropping to about 48.5, 48. I agree with that. I think we're going to have a lower scoring game here. But I'm going to lean with North Dakota State as an underdog. How do you not like them as an underdog? Take North Dakota State +1 over James Madison. Now let's go take a look at an NFL game for this week. And let's see, NFL and NFL. All right, we're going to take a look at the Vikings on the left. They are the road team. And we're going to take a look at San Francisco on the right. They are the home team. Now, when I looked at this game just off the cuff, look, San Francisco on the year has a better record. That's a good thing. The San Francisco 49ers are 5-2 straight up and against the spread versus teams with winning records. So when they're playing a team with a winning record, they do extremely well all season long. The Vikings in the regular season were 1-4 straight up and against the spread versus teams with a winning record in the regular season. They did beat the Saints last week. Very impressive performance. And what happens is a lot of times when you look at last week's game and you watch it, you get all excited about that team. But in this round of the playoffs, I like the fact that I like the fact that the team is at home off a bye, is in a great situation versus a team that, let me go to my Twitter page for a minute. I want to show you one thing on this. Something I retweeted today from David Behrman. Man, make sure you follow David Behrman. He's at DB1 Sports, works for ESPN, does a great job, puts up a lot of interesting stats during the course of the year. So give this guy a follow right here. But look at this stat. Over the last 3 seasons, Saturday home teams are 6-0 against the spread in the divisional round. And that makes sense. Teams playing on probably a shortened week versus a team off a bye. You love that situation. In this matchup, the first thing I look at is San Francisco's +99 yards per game. They're +13. Vikings haven't fared well against teams with winning records. San Francisco has. Just based on that, you'd have to make San Francisco about a 7-point favorite. But throw in the situation. The Vikings played the last game Sunday night in New Orleans, had to fly back to Minnesota. Now they have to fly out to the West Coast and play the first game on Saturday. So it's a very shortened week for the Vikings. Plus, there's that little celebration in there. You beat the Saints. Meanwhile, San Francisco's just laying at home in wait. They've done very well against the teams with the winning records. They're the better team overall, +99 yards per game, +13 yards per game. Better defense, 282 to 341. Better offense, 381 to 384. A lot of factors in San Francisco's factor, but I love that situation. You got the team that just pulled an upset Sunday night in New Orleans, fly back to Minnesota, now in a shortened week, playing first game on a Saturday on the West Coast. That's a tough situation for Minnesota to be in. And San Francisco's only laying a touchdown. So I like the 49ers in that game, -7 over Minnesota. Well, there we have your championship game recap. We touched on both the FCS and FBS one. Get yourself a couple more free selections. Hopefully keep the red hot streak alive. Gave you a recap of the bowls. And as always, I appreciate you following the Phil Steele Plus Tour. I find it an extremely valuable handicapping tool. This is one I'll be looking at. Let me show you something in the FBS here. When you use Phil Steele Plus, you can click on right here the records for the games are all right here. Oops, wrong one. And when you click on the records for the things, you can see like here, Ohio State has absolutely dominated Michigan, winning 8 of their last 9 games. So winning the last 8 games straight up against Michigan. Look at this, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 the last 15 games against Michigan. You get this complete analysis with the stats all on each game. I'll be using that as I start to look at next year's games and come up with my preseason lines on them already prior to the finish of the magazine this year. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So once again, thanks for taking the Phil Steele Plus tour. I'll let you know when I'm back. Just subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, and we'll make sure that we update you when the next one's up and available.